All right, for this section, we are going to talk about Guardicore competitive advantages. First, we're going to cover the competitive landscape and look at what competitors are out there. Then we'll talk about the business advantages of Guardicore. Then we'll talk about the technical advantages of Guardicore. And lastly, we'll discuss why we win versus why we lose from a competitive perspective. The competitive landscape. Our competitors are generally broken up into three buckets. The first one being other microsegmentation vendors, those being primarily Illumio, VMware NSX, Cisco Tetration, and Zscaler. Illumio in this bucket is our most apples to apples competitor and probably the toughest one that we come up against in the market. But we do see the other ones from time to time, and their VMware and Cisco obviously are already incumbents in many accounts, so we see them in a lot of opportunities as well. Next, we come up against the firewall vendors. So this is where we're specifically looking at firewall alternative or firewall replacement projects, and we see Palo Alto, Checkpoint, and Fortinet, as well as a few others, occasionally SonicWall and other vendors like that. And the third bucket is cloud native vendors. This is a very large bucket. There are a lot of different vendors in this space that offer a variety of capabilities that are competitive or somewhat similar to what Guardicore offers. So this can be anything from the cloud vendors like AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, to Palo Alto's Prisma Cloud, which is something new for them, and competitors like Aquasec that are more focused on the container environments. But there are a lot of them in this bucket. We will have separate competitive sessions for some of these vendors that you see up here on the screen today. Look out for those in the onboarding training as well. The other competitor is just do nothing. We do come up against organizations that enjoy the status quo and people that don't see a need to make a change to a software-defined approach to segmentation and want to just stick with what they've been doing. Sometimes that's the hardest competitor for us to come up against. We're going to talk about the business and technical advantages coming up that help us compete against all of these competitors, regardless of which vendor it happens to be. So the business advantages. There are three core business advantages to Guardicore and three reasons why organizations choose to invest in Guardicore. The first being simplicity, the second being flexibility, and the third being the coverage that they get from Guardicore Centra. We take a lot of pride in these three advantages, and the product is really focused on continuing to deliver in these areas and continuing to innovate in these areas as we compete against these different vendors. Focusing on simplicity itself, it really starts with the fact that we are generally a faster deployment than our competitors. This is because we're a software-based approach, and because in order to deploy us, you don't actually need to make any changes to the network to start implementing security policy. So this story really resonates well against the firewall vendors, against people that are in the do-nothing camp and are used to the status quo of VLANs, but it also resonates well against Tetration and VMware and Illumio, because even in a head-to-head microsegmentation battle, we do deploy faster than them. An example would be GM Financial explained to us that in 4 hours in a proof of concept, we achieved as much as Cisco Tetration achieved in 2 weeks. And that's simply because the product is built to be quickly deployed, quickly get information, and be able to quickly put policy in place. The next piece where we add simplicity is around dependency mapping. So this concept of application dependency mapping is identifying which systems your applications are communicating with. What do they rely on day to day? What DNS servers? What monitoring solutions connect to them? What AV solutions do they communicate back home to? We do this in an automated fashion because our agent actually collects this visibility data from the systems it's deployed on and presents it in a map, so you can quickly and easily see exactly how an application communicates and what its dependencies are. Automated labeling speaks to our AI labeling tool. Basically, labeling is a heavy lift in any microsegmentation project or software-based segmentation project. Labeling is a process of grouping and organizing assets together into buckets like the production environment versus the development environment, or the CRM application versus the document management system. In most approaches, this is a bit of a manual process. We use our labeling tool to actually look at the flow data and start to identify what is a database server, which systems are file servers, which systems are web servers versus domain controllers. So we start to automate this labeling process to create these groupings for customers without a lot of manual intervention. The next area we add simplicity is policy templates. Our policy store is built to allow someone to create firewall policy or segmentation policy with just 3 clicks. It's a wizard-driven approach. It's meant to take the complexity out of the rule writing process. So when many organizations write rules in firewalls, it is a bit of an arduous manual process where you're collecting IP port protocol information and then someone manually inputs those rules into the system. Our templates use the visibility data that we have or our knowledge of how an application communicates to automate the process of putting or suggesting rules for the customer. So when they walk through the wizard, they get a suggestion of rules based on the type of segmentation policy they're trying to put in place, and it really streamlines that workflow for them. In terms of integrations, we generally offer more integrations than our customers that are actually beneficial to operationally improving your experience of implementing a segmentation solution. What I mean by that is if you've already invested time and energy, say building out ServiceNow or putting tags in your VMware ESX environment or AWS environment, we can use those existing tags and that existing data to do things like label on the Guardicore side. So we use our integrations in a way that makes them very operationally efficient and useful for the customer. And lastly is proven methodology. Our services team offers a proven approach to getting a customer from zero to some form of segmentation. We do this by having a very well thought out workflow for how we implement the security policy, and from offering services that are outcome based. So we are fully committed to working with our customers to ensure that we achieve the use cases and the outcomes that they're expecting. They don't purchase a bucket of hours from Guardicore, they actually purchase an outcome. So we will ensure that an environment is properly segmented or an application is properly segmented as part of our SOWs for the services, which helps give organizations comfort that we're with them throughout that process. Next, we'll talk about flexibility. So when I talk about flexibility, the first thing I'm referring to is our approach to labeling. We offer no restrictions on the way an organization can label and group assets together. This is a very strong point specifically against Illumio, because Illumio offers a 4-label approach where the organization has to make sure that they are labeling according to Illumio's defined standard. And if you try and go outside of the 4 labels they offer you, which are environment, application, role, and location, you can't essentially go beyond those. So when you're trying to label by, say, device type, whether or not something is a laptop or desktop or an ATM machine, you can't do that with Illumio. If you're trying to label by operating system, whether it's Windows or Linux or Unix, you can't do that with Illumio. Guardicore offers no restrictions in labeling. You can have as many labels as you need to accomplish your use case. And the nice thing about our labels is also point number 2, where they're used in your business language. If you refer to what purpose a server has as the server's function instead of the server's role, in Guardicore you can just use function for your label. In Illumio, you have to change your business language to the labels that they offer you, which can create a disconnect between application owners, security teams, and infrastructure teams. So Guardicore allows you to use the customer's business language to actually implement labels and security policies that are human readable to them. Next is around the integration point, again from the simplicity side, where we will use work you've already done with other tools. You don't have to start from scratch with Guardicore, particularly in terms of the process of applying labels. If you've invested time in tags or metadata in other systems, our API will import those tags and that metadata into Guardicore as labels. In many cases, our competitors require you to start from scratch with the labeling process. And even if you have other repositories, they don't have APIs that offer you the ability to integrate with all of the repositories that you may have. Next is our policy engine, and the way it actually offers more options for customers to implement more granular or broader security policies. And what I mean by that is we can control traffic by source, destination, port, protocol, process, user, or FQDN. So there's a variety of options for how you actually implement your security policy with Guardicore and how broad or granular you may want those security policies to be. So we can solve use cases for customers that are just focused on traditional port and protocol control, or we can be as granular to say that only a specific user can leverage a specific application to make a connection. Really depends on what the customer is trying to accomplish and how they're attempting to reduce risk within the organization. Lastly, the flexibility that we have with the labeling and the policy engine just allows us to cover a broader set of use cases. And what I mean by this is customers can do third-party access controls, they can do environment segmentation, they can do critical application ring fencing, all in one solution. They also have the ability to leverage the other parts of Guardicore, such as deception and our breach detection capabilities, or our file integrity monitoring capabilities, or doing something like asset management by using Guardicore Insight. So we can become a bit of a Swiss Army knife for organizations as far as what use cases they're solving and the benefit they're getting out of the single solution that they purchase. Okay, the last business advantage is coverage. This is where we get into the fact that we are one user interface for covering all workloads. So if you're a traditional on-prem customer who has extended out to the cloud and you're using firewalls and VLANs, you're likely managing 2 to 3 different consoles for your security policy. You're managing access control list on switches, and with VLANs, you're managing policies on firewalls, and then you're probably managing a separate interface in your cloud provider for what they call security groups, or the firewall that the cloud offers you. And that's a lot of work. Normally it may be different teams managing these different consoles as well. So how do you actually troubleshoot and understand what policies are in place where? Guardicore Centra is a single UI for managing all security policy across the environment. Next in coverage is our operating system support. We offer the broadest coverage for our OS support, and this is because our agent is not reliant on the operating system firewall. So it gives us the ability to offer an agent for Windows 2003 or Red Hat 5 or CentOS 6, while also having an agent that covers more modern operating systems, Windows 2019, containers, Docker, Kubernetes, those types of more modern OS and infrastructure services. The agent also allows us to be agnostic to the infrastructure, so it doesn't matter where you deploy the workload. It could be a bare metal server, it could be a VM running in VMware, a VM running out in AWS, or a container running inside of a Kubernetes deployment inside of the Google Cloud. There's no restriction to the infrastructure that we're deployed on. The agent just runs on top of the operating system, which allows us to be agnostic. Next is device coverage. And when I talk about device coverage, I'm referring to OT devices, IoT devices, things that we just simply cannot and will not put an agent on in the customer environment. Many of our competitors don't have a way to solve this gap. They only offer an agent, or they're not flexible enough to extend out to these other types of devices. Guardicore offers 2 ways of covering these devices. One is with a collector. So we have a network sniffing device that we can connect to the network and collect information from a switch or a tap. That gives us the ability to visualize the traffic flows to and from these devices and set policy to alert on violations to the policies that we put in place. The other side of device coverage comes through our integrations with solutions like Armis and Order, where they are purpose-built for IoT device environments or OT device environments, and we can leverage their data and their information in the Guardicore Centric Console to give the customer a better understanding of the devices in those IoT and OT environments that are communicating back to applications. So we offer customers flexible options for how we actually cover these devices that we cannot put agents on. Next around coverage is we give a consistent policy experience. So I mentioned earlier in this slide that we are the firewall. Our agent is the firewall, and we do not rely on the operating system firewall, which would be Windows firewall or IP tables. What this means is we can provide the same level of policy control regardless of the operating system. So in Windows, the Windows firewall allows you to set policy down to the user and process that are actually creating the connection. IP tables itself is only port and protocol. So if you're in a mixed environment with Windows and Linux servers and you're using Illumio or Tetration, since they rely on the OS firewall to do their enforcement, they give you a different level of policy granularity depending on the operating system you're deployed on. So now if I'm the customer, I have to think about the policy I'm putting in place, think about which operating system is going to be applied to in order to understand if I'm going to get the appropriate level of granularity to reduce risk. With Guardicore, we provide consistency in that policy experience across all the operating systems you're working with. Again, on coverage, we see more use cases. We just naturally have the ability to cover more use cases for our customers and provide them with more value than other solutions that we compete against. And our integrations. We mentioned integrations under simplicity. They're also good here in coverage because we provide the ability to offer more integrations with a more flexible API than our competitors. And we talked about some of those integrations like with AWS or ServiceNow or Armis or Order. There are other ones with solutions like SentinelOne, Tenable, AlgoSec, and others that are out there, but we just have a very flexible API and a very good way to deliver broader coverage for our customers through the integrations that we offer. Everyone is looking for the vendor they choose to be a good ecosystem partner. Guardicore is a great ecosystem partner because we are more than willing to integrate with other solutions in the environment, whether that's through native integrations or building integrations via our API. Okay, that's all for the business advantages. Now we're going to go to the technical advantages. The Guardicore technical advantages can be put into 4 buckets. First, there is our agent. Next, it is our visibility. Third, being our policy engine. And fourth, being our feature breadth. We talked about a little bit of each of these during the business advantages, so I could map these technical capabilities back to the business advantages, but we're going to get a deeper dive on each of these now. So the agent advantages, again, the broadest coverage of operating systems that are available of any microsegmentation or software-defined segmentation vendor. Our agents are also optimized for performance. So whether we're referring to CPU or memory performance or latency impact on connections or bandwidth impact on the network, we offer the best solution for this. This is because we build our own agent and we can control the performance impact that agent has because we're not reliant on other parts of the operating system. Our process level controls and the context that we provide allows organizations to not only put a more secure, more granular policy in place for reducing risk, but also gives them enough information to make intelligent decisions about allowing or blocking a connection. When I'm trying to put policy in place as a customer, a lot of times I look at connection data and I have to question whether or not it is legitimate. And in order to make that decision, I need the right level of context. Guardicore's process level information and the level of detail we provide about who is executing that process, where is it running out of, when did that connection occur, allows you a good level of context to make informed decisions about the policies you're putting in place. The agent also includes a variety of breach detection features, from deception to FIM to using insight for breach detection. So the agent does more than just security policy and segmentation. And it's compatible with all common distribution platforms. So no matter how you're trying to deploy the agent, whether that's Ansible playbooks, SCCM, BigFix, other deployment tools, Guardicore provides a compatible approach to deploying our agent with all those common platforms. The next technical advantage is our visibility. If you've watched the Guardicore demo so far, the visibility is the part of the demo where we provide the customer with a visual experience to really understand what is going on in the environment, and they can slice and dice that visibility into different views so that depending on how they want to see the environment or the type of traffic or applications they're interested in, they can create those different views in order to understand what's going on. It's important to note that we do this all in one view. Speaking about other competitors, they do sometimes offer historical data, but it requires a different interface to look at, and it requires you to kind of pivot in and out of different views. Guardicore gives you one view for everything. Around historical information, many of our competitors just offer point in time or 1 day or 1 week of data. Guardicore offers 60 days worth of data for a customer. This allows them to use historical data in their planning for policy building. It allows them to use it for forensic analysis, migration to the cloud or to other data centers. The historical data we provide becomes a great operational tool for organizations to take advantage of because it's essentially a time machine. They can go back in time and see how an application or an environment or a system was communicating and compare that to current state, or use it to do some type of analysis and see what else they may have been communicating with at that time. The historical data is a huge differentiator for us. We talked about the automated application discovery or the application dependency mapping, the ability for us to collect the visibility data, help someone understand how an application is communicating without them having to tell us anything about that application. Really streamlines their ability to make decisions and start getting policy in place, but it all starts with giving them a good visual experience to understand those dependency mappings. And lastly is our orchestration data. If you want to understand where a system is deployed, if it's running in AWS, what region in AWS, what region in Azure, the orchestration information will tell you that. So hooking into these different orchestration tools using our integrations becomes a really great benefit for customers to improve their understanding of the environment and what systems are and where they're running from. So the policy engine, we talked a little bit about this under the business advantages. The policy engine is really what allows us to get policy in place fast, do what we call quick time to policy. And it also allows us the flexibility to let organizations reduce risk in whatever way they need in order to accomplish their use case. The first point here is we offer blacklist and whitelist models, or deny list and allow list models. And what that means is most segmentation vendors are allow list only. So they start by saying, these are the authorized connections, allow all of this, and block anything else that doesn't meet the list of authorized connections. That's a great approach. It's a very secure approach, but it's also a very slow and time-consuming approach. When you're trying to go through the environment and whitelist every individual connection, it can take a lot of time. Depending on the use case, in some scenarios, the deny list approach is just more efficient and more effective. One example would be if I want to prevent all of my database servers from communicating directly to the internet. With a deny list approach, it's one rule that says if you're labeled as a database server, you cannot connect directly to the internet. In an allow list approach, I first have to go through every database server and say, which connections are you authorized to make? What is legitimate traffic to and from the database servers? And then there will be catch-all rules that say if you don't meet this list of approved connections, you're not allowed to create this connection. You can get to the same end result in those two scenarios. One is just much more efficient. So we give our customers the option to either take a deny list or an allow list approach to achieve the most efficient method of putting their policies in place. We talked about the policy templates and the wizards and suggestions and the ability to put policy in place with 3 clicks and take the guesswork out of that process and use the visibility data to transform that into actual security policy, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And not and or equations are just ways of applying logical operators within rule sets. And for firewall administrators, they know that they need these operators in order to successfully implement the variety of rule sets and use cases that they're trying to address. Not all of our competitors actually offer the ability to do and, not, and, or equations. FQDN rules, this is controlling something accessing a URL. So think about the ability to control systems accessing just update.microsoft.com for updates and not accidentally being tricked into connecting to a rogue update server that is delivering malware. We have the ability to control FQDN access. Generally, this refers to north-south traffic going in and out the internet boundary. It can also occasionally refer to internal access to websites based on their URLs as well. Identity-based rules is where we control by a user's identity. Who are you? What role do you play? We can ensure that only finance users can access finance applications, and only engineering users can access engineering applications, while making sure that the server and IT admins can still access everything that they need to do their job. And we do this based on the user's role in the organization by integrating with Active Directory. Lastly, we offer layer 7 or process level policies regardless of the operating system. We talked about this before. Because Guardicore is our own firewall and we do the decision making to allow or block traffic, we were able to build a firewall that provided a consistent policy experience regardless of the operating system we're running on. The last technical advantage is really our feature breadth. So it's the fact that we offer breach detection and other capabilities beyond just being a segmentation tool. So there's Guardicore Insight, which is our ability to query systems and ask them any question we might want. This can be around asset management, it can be around compliance, or it can be around identifying a malicious or vulnerable piece of software running in the environment. Guardicore Insight is something that provides a lot of value to organizations, and it's already baked right into the Guardicore agent. Malware detection and threat feed, this is our reputation analysis service, and it simply allows us to detect malicious processes or malicious connections to hosts that are out on the internet that may be command and control servers or attacking IP, something that we've referenced as being malicious. The threat intelligence firewall is a subset of the reputation analysis service, and it's already pre-populated on all customer SaaS environments. So if we see a malicious connection out to a known malicious host on the internet, we'll just block it right out of the gate. So why let that stuff occur if we know it to be malicious? So the threat intelligence firewall can be pre-populated in a customer environment to start providing value right out of the gate. File integrity monitoring monitors the hashes of files or processes in a customer environment on a system in order to detect when a change may have happened to that file. This is a very common requirement in a lot of compliance initiatives, specifically PCI. So this gives us the ability to cover a broader set of use cases and allow customers to have one solution that covers more regulations and requirements for specific compliance initiatives. Deception is our ability to spin up honeypots and operationalize the use of honeypot technology without providing an overly complicated end user experience. And what happens is we detect suspicious connections within an environment, we redirect them to a honeypot, which looks and feels like a server or a database or a system in the customer environment. We then engage the attacker or piece of malware or negligent user, whatever created the suspicious connection, and we see if they log in and what they do. And we collect everything they do when they're connected to the honeypots, and we provide it back as indicators of compromise so that an organization can strengthen their security posture and know that there may be an attacker moving laterally within the environment. Lastly is integrations with things like vulnerability scanners. So integrations in general, we can take data from other systems and use it within the Guardicore platform. Our ability to be a good ecosystem partner is something that customers very much appreciate because the days of single point products are gone. They need solutions that integrate and interrupt with each other. Guardicore is a great ecosystem partner. Okay, that's all for the business and the technical advantages. Now I'm going to talk about why we win and why we lose from the competitive perspective. First, let's start with why we win. Let's start with the good. Why we win generally is because we have a really good understanding of the expected business outcomes. By understanding the expected business outcomes, we can put a really great test plan in place to show our strengths and show where we shine in helping the customer achieve that business outcome. Next is we equip our champion to position us competitively. Whenever we're in a competitive situation, there is always some form of FUD on the other side, or there is always a person who may be a power user for VMware or a power user for Palo Alto and really likes their product and doesn't want to change to a new vendor or a new platform. So we need to ensure that early on in our sales cycle, we are appropriately identifying the competitors that are out there and equipping our champion to position us competitively against those competitors. Next is simplicity and flexibility equals speed. Our ability to quickly deploy and get a customer from zero to some form of policy sets us apart from our competition. So once we have identified the good business outcomes and we've built a good test plan, we can usually execute very quickly in the evaluation stage to give the customer a good example of how they could implement their use case and how they could solve that problem. And that's driven by the simplicity and the flexibility that we offer. Next would be we make the rounds. We find out who else can be an objector. We generally start selling into a security team. A CISO or a security architect is oftentimes our champion in an account. But we need to get to the people who manage the firewall. We need to get to the network teams and the infrastructure teams, application owners, DevOps teams. And we need to make sure that that person is willing to introduce us to those other users within the organization. This way we can find out who else may be an objector. Who else do we need to understand what their goals are? Who else do we need to understand how and why they would implement a solution like Guardicore and understand their different business drivers? So we need to make the rounds within an organization and identify those people. Lastly, we win because of our people. We win because Guardicore is a good group of people who are working together to help a customer solve a complex business challenge and reduce risk and mitigate vulnerabilities using the Guardicore Centra security platform. There have been many sales cycles where the final decision comes down to the fact that Guardicore people just care more than our competitors. We view our partnership with organizations as a very strong part of our business relationships. So we want to be a strong partner to them. In turn, we want them to be a strong partner for us. So the people within Guardicore are oftentimes the reason that we win our deals because we show that we care, we execute well, we're honest with the way the product works. We don't sell vaporware to our customers. And in many cases, that has differentiated us from our competitors. So why do we lose? Well, to be honest, competitively, we don't lose often on a technical feature. Generally speaking, we lose because of some of the stuff we have here. One is we're unaware of who the competition is. We haven't taken the time to understand who they are, so we can't start to set up the appropriate traps and differentiator for Guardicore. Next is we haven't totally clarified the business outcome. So we don't understand what we're actually up against and what we're actually trying to be compared against, and what the metrics are and what the customer is expecting out of the sales cycle and the evaluation process. This is normally where we lose on something technical. We get told we're overly complicated, or we didn't actually meet the technical requirements, and many times it's because we haven't taken the time to fully understand what those business outcomes and requirements are. Sometimes we lose because we fail to build our champion in the account. As I mentioned before, a lot of times we come into a deal and there is already a Palo Alto champion, a VMware champion, a Cisco champion, and we fail to build and equip our champion to go to bat and go to VPs and C-level people and make the case for why Guardicore. In the world we're in now, from a sales perspective, you need to enable your champion to do the internal selling for you, because there are a lot of conversations that happen that we're not privileged to in the sales cycle. That's just the reality of it. So we need to ensure that we equip our champion in order to position us competitively against what other competitors may be in the account. Next is we don't get to all the stakeholders, especially stakeholders that are higher up in the organization. A lot of the times when we do get stakeholders involved, it's towards the evaluation. And those stakeholders are analysts and engineers, and they're the hands-on technical operators. But we don't get above them to their directors and VPs to understand their perspective on the project, their goals, what they need to accomplish. We need to get to stakeholders very early in the process. So after the first or second conversation, once you feel like you're starting to get a champion in that account, we should be trying to get to stakeholders at that point. We shouldn't be waiting until the evaluation or the negotiation phase to start getting to those other stakeholders. We should be doing it as early as possible. And lastly is we're too late to the party. We get into these opportunities when they have almost made a decision on VMware or Cisco or Illumio or Palo Alto. They're close to signing the paperwork. So we need to do a better job of being out there, building the brand, getting in front of channel partners, using the partners to get in front of their relationships so that we know when these projects are occurring or when they're coming up 6 months down the road, versus getting into the conversation too late to really influence the requirements or influence the decision-making process. So the earlier we can understand that there's going to be a project or opportunity that Guardicore can compete for, the better off we are. But in some scenarios, we do actually get to the conversation too late to actually change someone's decision. All right, so we just covered the competitive landscape, the competitive business advantages, the competitive technical advantages, and then why we win and why we lose from a competitive perspective. I hope what you took away from this presentation was there's a variety of different competitors we compete against, from the microsegmentation space, the firewall vendors, and some cloud native solutions that are out there. Our primary business advantages are around our simplicity, our flexibility, and our coverage. Our primary technical advantages are around our agent, the visibility provide, our policy engine, and the feature breadth that we offer. And the reasons we win and reasons we lose from a competitive scenario are oftentimes because we haven't done our diligence or we're getting to the opportunity too late. So let's identify those competitors early, equip our champions, position us well within the account, look for the different traps and differentiators that we can set, and just be knowledgeable of who our competitors are and how we position ourselves against them. So look out for individual sessions around specific competitors like Illumio and NSX and Palo Alto. Several of those will be also part of the onboarding training. So thank you very much.